A dedicated female Marine captain vanished from her quarters without a trace. Renowned for her outstanding service and exemplary conduct, her colleagues found it nearly impossible to believe she would simply go absent without leave. Military authorities suspected she had fallen victim to foul play. The FBI joined the investigation, committed to finding the decorated officer or securing a second chance at justice. Lena Russell was a woman of unwavering determination. She had risen through the ranks to become a captain in the United States Marine Corps. When this accomplished officer went missing, her fellow Marines refused to accept that she had gone AWOL. It remained uncertain whether Captain Lena Russell was alive or dead. I'm Agent Harlan Beck, former head of the FBI's New York office. When a crime occurs on a military installation, it falls under federal jurisdiction. Agents would have to rely on their dedication and sharp instincts to unravel the mystery of her disappearance. The Marine Corps base at Quantico, Virginia, lies just south of Washington, D.C. Since 1917, it has served as headquarters for one of the nation's most elite branches of the military. More than 3,000 Marines train, work, and live on the vast base. Nearly every facet of civilian life finds its mirror there, from department stores to family housing. Married officers have the option of living on base in married officers' quarters, known as MOQs. For several months, MOQ number 394D had been home to Captain Lena Gibbs Russell and her husband, Derek Russell. Early in the year, Captain Russell made the painful decision to end her marriage. In the weeks that followed, she would stay with a friend off base until bachelor housing became available. Lena packed her civilian clothes, her uniforms, and her Marine-issued firearm. Derek begged her to stay, his voice thick with desperation. But Lena's resolve was unshakable. The separation was final. For Derek, the split meant he too had to leave base. As a former Marine, he was losing his last remaining tie to the Corps he had once loved. Captain Russell continued to advance in her career as adjutant to the commanding officer of the support battalion at the Marine Basic School. She was responsible for all personnel matters and administrative needs of the support battalion. She was known as a dedicated and capable Marine by her peers and by her commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Victor Lang. When I first met Lena Russell, I was deeply impressed by the fact that she was a black female captain, because we simply did not have many in the Marine Corps at that time. She had come from a modest background and was making something of herself. She seemed so energized, so eager to keep moving up the ranks. Captain Russell and Lieutenant Colonel Lang had built a friendship grounded in mutual respect while assigned together. "I can't talk to you right now. Now is not a good time." Lang knew her marriage was in trouble. "I'll have to talk to you later." "Everything all right, Captain?" "My relationship with Lena Russell was very special," Lang later shared. "Even though I was her commanding officer, and her ultimate boss, if you will, I was very close to her, almost like a big brother or mentor. We would talk sometimes after working hours about her situation, her marriage, her past, and so forth." Around that time, roughly a month after her split with Derek, Lena requested leave from work. She needed to clean her former quarters and finalize her legal separation. Several days later, Lieutenant Colonel Lang arrived at the office expecting to find Lena at her desk. He was surprised to discover her office empty. Lena had maintained a perfect work record. She had never once been late to report. When I walked in the door, I asked Major Reed Thornton right away, "Where's Lena?" And he said, "Sir, she's not here." And instantly I felt it. Oh no, something has happened to her. Lieutenant Colonel Lang launched an investigation into the unauthorized absence. Captain Russell had recently moved into bachelor officers' quarters on base. Lang hoped he would find her at home. Captain Russell, open the door, Corporal, please, sir." As her commanding officer, Lang had authorization to search the room. "Captain Russell?" There was no sign of her, and no indication she had moved out. "You all right, Corporal?" "Yes, sir." The Marines returned to the office and contacted the captain's husband, who now lived off base. Lang knew that Derek Russell had helped Lena clean and paint their vacated quarters over the weekend. They arranged to meet at the couple's former MOQ. The Marine officers inspected the residence. Derek told them that he and Lena had met there around midday to do some touch-up painting. "I'm sorry. I know something's wrong." According to Derek, Lena had volunteered to buy more paint from the base exchange around mid-afternoon. He claimed she did not take her car but walked to the PX instead. Derek said he had not seen her since. Lieutenant Colonel Lang did not believe Derek Russell's story. It struck him as completely false. The PX was several miles away. There was no way in the world Lena would have walked that distance from their quarters. Outside the quarters, the officers also inspected Derek's storage shed. On the floor, Colonel Lang noticed a rust-colored stain. Derek dismissed it as paint. Lang was skeptical. He was no expert, but to him it looked like blood. Lieutenant Colonel Lang briefed the Naval Investigative Service. The NIS reported the possibility of a crime to the FBI's Washington field office. The NIS briefed special agents on the case. Captain Russell had been missing for several days. With no indication of her whereabouts, the agents followed standard procedure. Special Agent Marcus Reed headed the investigation. When you have somebody missing, you either have a case of an abduction, a missing person who's walked away for whatever reason, or foul play. So the initial investigation that the FBI was involved in ran all three of those investigative lines. According to standard procedure, the missing woman's husband, Derek Russell, was the first to be questioned. He told agents that he was talking with a neighbor around mid-afternoon on the day of Lena's disappearance, when a friend of hers stopped by to pick her up for lunch. Later that afternoon, Derek said he called her bachelor officers' quarters to see if she had gone home. The duty clerk had not seen Captain Russell, so Derek left a message. Around late afternoon, Derek borrowed his housemate's car and drove to Pennsylvania to spend the weekend with his parents. During the first interview that I had with Derek Russell, he was very calm, very businesslike, wanted to assist the FBI in the investigation, and provided me with multiple locations of where Lena might be, who she may be associated with, what could have happened. Derek thought it was possible someone had abducted her or harmed her. Though Lena had no enemies, the couple had experienced trouble because of their interracial marriage. Derek told agents he and his wife frequently visited his hometown near Mahanoy City, Pennsylvania. One afternoon while shopping, the Russells were harassed by racists. According to her husband, Lena had been frightened, but another incident scared her even more. An unidentified man had called their house on base. The caller used racial epithets and threatened to harm the couple. Whoever the caller was knew where the Russells lived. After the threatening phone calls, Derek told officials he felt Lena might need protection for the times he could not be with her. At a pawn shop near base, Derek selected a .25 caliber Raven semi-automatic just days before Lena disappeared. Derek told agents he surprised Lena with the gift on the day they met to clean their former quarters. "I want you to be safe." According to Derek, Lena was appreciative of the pearl-handled weapon. Agents were suspicious of the story. As a Marine captain, Lena already had a personal sidearm. If she felt unsafe, why would she need another gun? With Lena and the gun nowhere to be found, that question would be difficult to answer. Marine Captain Lena Gibbs Russell vanished from base housing on the day in question. Her husband was the last person to have seen her. Agents needed to corroborate his story. The FBI interviewed Marine Captain Renee Holt. According to Derek Russell, on the day Lena disappeared, Captain Holt had arrived at Lena's former residence to pick her up for lunch around mid-afternoon. Holt confirmed this. Derek also told her that Lena had gone for paint and had not returned. Captain Holt thought this was odd. Lena never missed appointments, and this one had been especially important. Just the day before, Holt had accompanied Lena to the base legal office to pick up her separation papers. Lena planned to present them to Derek the day they painted their former quarters. This would make their separation official, and Lena worried about Derek's reaction. Afterwards, she would need a friend to talk to, and had asked Captain Holt to meet her. When Lena failed to show up, Captain Holt worried that Derek had done something to her friend. FBI agents checked Lena's bachelor officer's quarters. The clerk had not seen her since the day she disappeared. On that same day, Corporal Theo Barnes confirmed that Derek Russell had called looking for his wife. The corporal noted the time in his logbook as mid-afternoon. About half an hour after he took the message, Barnes thought he saw Captain Russell. She was talking on the telephone. He recalled that she was wearing jeans and a maroon sweater. He wanted to give her the message that her husband had called, but he was distracted. By the time Barnes was free, the woman he thought was Captain Lena Russell was gone. His description contradicted Derek Russell's statement that Lena had been wearing a blue jogging outfit. The corporal also only saw the woman from behind. He never got a good look at her face. Agents doubted whether she had ever returned to her apartment. They found no trace that Lena had changed her clothes or brought back the separation papers. Investigators questioned Derek's old neighbors. One of them said she saw a blue station wagon backed up to the Russells' shed on the day Lena disappeared. She noted the time was late afternoon. This was later than Derek claimed he had left for Pennsylvania. Investigators wondered if Derek Russell was mistaken or lying. Agent Marcus Reed called the FBI in Pennsylvania to pin down Derek's whereabouts for the rest of that day. Special Agent Nathan Cole of the Allentown office became co-case agent. He contacted Derek's parents. Derek Russell had traveled to St. Clair, Pennsylvania, and stayed with his family that weekend. FBI interviews with Derek's family confirmed he had arrived alone. None of them had seen Lena. The FBI launched a media campaign seeking the public's help. Captain Lena Gibbs Russell's photo was featured in television and newspaper stories. Leads began to pour in. Midway between Quantico and Derek Russell's hometown, a clerk in York, Pennsylvania, called federal authorities. The clerk reported that a young black woman had been in the store on the afternoon of the day Captain Lena Gibbs Russell disappeared from Quantico. According to the clerk, the woman bought several items and paid with a check. The clerk asked the woman for identification. She produced a military ID card. She resembled photos the clerk had seen in the newspaper. The agent asked to see the checks received that day. He found that none of them were written by Lena Gibbs Russell. Assistant U.S. Attorney Gregory Vale worked with the FBI on the case. He noted another detail suggesting the woman in the store was not Captain Russell. The color of the ID and the location of the picture described as belonging to Lena Russell was the ID of a dependent military person, not of an active duty service member. There had been no activity in Captain Russell's bank or credit card accounts since the day she disappeared, nor had she called her family or friends. Considering Lena's stable character, her disappearance made no sense to Agent Marcus Reed. She was the type of person who was going to do very well in the Marine Corps. She would be promoted. She had that capability. She was sharp. She was squared away. She was easy to make friends. Everybody that worked with her liked her. She had a lot of stability in her life with regard to church and family. For her to just disappear of her own accord just didn't make any logical sense. With no word from her or from any kidnapper, agents believed it was likely that Captain Lena Gibbs Russell was dead. They were now searching for her body. Dozens of Marines fanned out across the huge base. They searched hundreds of acres of dense woods the Marines used for training. They found no trace of the missing captain. Perhaps Derek Russell knew more about his wife's disappearance than he was telling the FBI. Agents asked him to submit to a polygraph examination. He agreed. That the last time you saw her, you were painting your quarters, and it was sometime prior to mid-afternoon on the day she disappeared. That's correct. As before, agents found him to be cool and cooperative. For nearly 3 hours, Derek Russell answered dozens of questions relating to Lena's whereabouts. He was subjected to 3 separate exams. What is this red spot, paint, Mr. Russell? Yes, it was. Each time, Derek Russell was found to be deceptive. When agents told him the results, Derek seemed unfazed, almost smug. We need to exclude you from any of those results. He even consented to be fingerprinted. Perhaps he was aware that polygraphs were inadmissible in a federal court of law. Without a body, agents would need something stronger than a hunch to prove that Derek had killed his wife and disposed of her. In the spring of that year, the FBI continued to hunt for the body of Marine Captain Lena Gibbs Russell. In their search for answers, agents delved deeper into the background of their prime suspect, her husband, Derek Russell. Special Agent Nathan Cole learned that Derek was already married before he met Lena. He had 2 children with his first wife, Deborah. The marriage lasted only several years. During the mid-1980s, Derek told his wife he wanted a divorce. He left Deborah and their children during the holiday season. Several months later, Derek married Lena while they were both stationed at Parris Island, South Carolina. The FBI learned that Lena was transferred to Quantico a short time later. They also learned that Derek told friends the distance was hurting his marriage. He claimed he was leaving the Marine Corps to join Lena in Quantico in order to stabilize their relationship. But agents discovered a different motive for the move. Agents believed it was unlikely Derek would voluntarily relinquish his rank as captain. Being in the Marine Corps had been Derek's whole life and whole world. Military records showed that in February of the previous year, while stationed at Gulfport, Mississippi, Derek's superiors found that his passion for the Corps did not extend to its regulations. They issued Derek a less than honorable discharge for dereliction of duty and defrauding the government. He was escorted out of his office and prohibited from taking anything with him except his own clothing. Although Derek was no longer a Marine, he moved into officers' quarters at Quantico, based on Lena's rank of captain. While Lena supported him, Derek tried to get his life back on track by becoming a teacher at a nearby high school, but his drinking began to grow excessive. He was getting drunk more often and staying out later. Lena was distraught. She joined Al-Anon, a support group for the loved ones of alcoholics. When Derek became physically abusive, Lena finally left him. Assistant U.S. Attorney Gregory Vale believed that Derek's problems left Lena few alternatives. She realized the marriage was going nowhere. She began receiving counseling from a local center available to members of the Marine Corps. She also consulted a Navy lawyer to begin the divorce process. To investigators, Derek's instability and abusive behavior reinforced their belief that he was capable of killing Lena. His personality could not tolerate the fact that this black woman, his wife, was a Marine Corps captain who was succeeding in her career, and, to top it all off, wanted to divorce him. Agents learned that during her separation, Lena had sought refuge off base with her close friend, fellow Marine Captain Claire Benson. Captain Benson told Agent Reed that Lena was afraid of her husband. She intended to leave him but needed a place to stay. She had asked Captain Claire Benson if she could stay with her at her townhome in the Springfield, Virginia area. Captain Benson agreed and set clear ground rules. Derek Russell was not to be there, was not to come into the house. Nothing of the kind. But it was not enough to keep Derek away from Lena. Benson was worried about her. Benson told investigators that Derek was stalking Lena. On several occasions, he showed up at the house early in the morning as Lena was leaving. He harassed his wife until she agreed to spend time with him. Benson said Derek Russell was living off base. He had moved in with one of his new colleagues. An FBI agent checked the address. It was the home of Lori Kane. Lori Kane offered little at first. She said she knew nothing about Derek's missing wife. On the way out, the agent met Lori's father-in-law, a retired painter who had worked at the base at Quantico for 10 years. Lori's father-in-law told the agent about a conversation he had with Derek Russell days after Lena's disappearance. Derek had asked him how to clean up stains from concrete floors. The father-in-law told Derek he could use chlorine or soap and water to clean it up or dilute it. Derek had asked, "Well, what if it's blood?" The father-in-law had replied, "Well, you could use muriatic acid." Lori's father-in-law told the agent something else of interest. Lori and her husband had recently separated. He suspected Lori was now having an affair with Derek Russell. With each new person agents interviewed, they found more deception from Derek Russell. If Lori was indeed involved with Derek, she might know whether he had killed Lena. Agents would inform her it would be unwise to obstruct a federal murder case. Lori Kane agreed to speak with the FBI. This time, agents found her far more cooperative. She described her role in Derek Russell's obsession. She admitted to having an intimate affair with Derek while he was still married. She told agents that at Derek's request, she had surveilled Lena Russell so she could report Lena's activities and whereabouts to him. He had enlisted her as his spy. Lori told the FBI, Derek was convinced Lena was having an affair. He wanted to know where she went and whom she met. Lori followed her everywhere, but found nothing to support his delusional fixation. He was so compulsive he wanted to catch his wife cheating. The irony, of course, was that she was not cheating at all. He was the one cheating on her. Derek was too far gone for logic. He refused to believe the assurances of his mistress. In his own mind, if he was cheating, then so was Lena, and he would go to any lengths to prove it. He told Lori that he broke into his wife's car and planted a voice-activated recorder. When it failed to record anything incriminating, he decided he needed to get closer. Derek broke into Captain Claire Benson's house to bug Lena's bedroom. What happened next told Lori that her lover's obsession had completely consumed him. Derek called his mistress from his wife's bedroom, speaking in a whisper. He told Lori he was drinking Lena's wine and reading her journal. Then he said something she would never forget. He informed her that if Lena came up missing, it would be him. He would have taken care of her. Lori had said they could not do that. She warned him that if anyone questioned her, she would deny everything and would not admit to the conversation they were having now. Lori's statements were incriminating, but it was her word against his. To corroborate her story, the FBI needed physical evidence. We requested a consent search of Captain Claire Benson's residence and retrieved several items. One was a telephone and one was a wine glass. When we sent those to the FBI laboratory for analysis, we were able to develop Derek Russell's fingerprints on those items. The FBI now had its first piece of physical evidence to corroborate that Derek Russell had obsessively stalked his wife. But without Lena's body, it was still not enough to charge him with murder. In the spring of that year, there was little evidence to link Derek Russell to the murder of his wife, Marine Captain Lena Gibbs Russell. Early in the investigation, agents learned the suspect had been having an affair with Lori Kane. Kane now told the FBI more about the day Lena Gibbs Russell disappeared. She said Derek Russell had borrowed her car, a blue station wagon, to drive to his parents' house in Pennsylvania. She remembered he left her house sometime after mid-afternoon. Lori thought this was strange because he could have used his own pickup truck. Assistant U.S. Attorney Gregory Vale believed Derek borrowed her car that day to transport Lena's body to Pennsylvania. The reason he asked to use that car was because he had an open-bed pickup truck. The body was still in the storage shed, and he had to dispose of the body. He couldn't do it in an open-bed pickup truck, so he borrowed the closed station wagon of his girlfriend to dispose of the body. Agents hoped to substantiate this theory. They returned to Derek's former residence, where his neighbor had seen the same blue station wagon backed up to his shed. Investigators needed to take a closer look at the floor where Lieutenant Colonel Lang had seen the rust-colored stain. But the stain was gone, at least on the surface. As they were chiseling up pieces of the concrete, Derek Russell asked what was going on. They told him they were taking samples to determine what the substance on the concrete was. Derek voluntarily told them, "Well, I had cleaned that up with some muriatic acid." The FBI lab confirmed that muriatic acid was present on the concrete, the same substance Lori's father-in-law had suggested Derek use to remove blood from cement. Technicians found no trace of blood or paint on the chips. What could have been a key piece of forensic evidence had been destroyed. Agents hoped Lori Kane's car would reveal more. FBI examiners scoured the station wagon inside and out. It was unusually clean for an older car that had so recently made a round trip from Virginia to Pennsylvania. It turned out to be another dead end. As the investigation stalled in Virginia, Derek Russell split up with Lori, packed his things, and moved to Pennsylvania to start a new life. The FBI's investigative focus turned north as well. Agents followed Derek's every move. They observed that while he relied on his parents for support, he was very close to his brothers Kyle and Seth. Agents approached the brothers on several occasions. Kyle Russell agreed to meet with agents. He told them that the day after Derek arrived in Pennsylvania following Lena's disappearance, Derek took Lori Kane's station wagon to a nearby car wash. Derek and his brother thoroughly cleaned the inside of the car, vacuumed it, and sprayed it with deodorizer. Agents believed Derek's actions demonstrated his intent to remove any evidence that Lena's body had been in the car. Kyle Russell told agents he never saw a body. He did concede that his brother's behavior had seemed desperate since Lena left him. In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, Kyle and his older brother Seth drove to Virginia to take away Derek's guns. Agent Cole recalled that the brothers felt this was necessary to prevent Derek from hurting someone. He was depressed in the fact that he was no longer in the Marine Corps, that he loved the Marine Corps. He didn't have money. He was a captain in the Marine Corps. Now he's a special education teacher. Lena had removed him from her checking account, so he was having problems financially. Circumstantial evidence was mounting, but the FBI lacked one crucial piece of evidence for their case: Lena Gibbs Russell's body. The first question was where to look. Agents learned the answer from Derek Russell's first wife, Deborah. Derek's boyhood home was in Schuylkill County, a rural, mountainous region in northeastern Pennsylvania. Thousands of coal mines, mostly abandoned, are scattered throughout the rugged county. Some are hundreds of feet deep and partially filled with water. As a young man, suspect Derek Russell had spent much of his time hiking and hunting in the region. His family said he knew the place like the back of his hand. A search conducted in this terrain would be daunting, but nobody ever questioned whether it should be done. 150 people participated in the extensive ground search for Lena Gibbs Russell that spring. Volunteers from the FBI, the Marines, the Naval Investigative Service, and the Pennsylvania State Police took part. None of them were more eager to find the missing Marine than her own peers from the United States Marine Corps. 9 helicopters and 6 transport trucks filled with Marines were deployed. Over the course of 3 days, they searched 2,000 acres of land. They never found Captain Russell's body. Agents would soon develop a theory as to why the search was not more fruitful. Agent Cole learned about a strange phone call Seth Russell received from his brother Derek. Derek had asked Seth if he could get him some dynamite. Derek had stated that he couldn't get dynamite in at Quantico because it was too expensive. And Seth had asked Derek why he wanted dynamite. And Derek's response was, "I want to blow up Lena." Seth never bought the dynamite, but agents now wondered whether Derek Russell had thrown Lena's body into a mine shaft and then sealed her grave with an explosion. The search did yield one surprising result. An agent found what appeared to be the grip of a gun handle. It was sent to the Firearms and Tool Marks Unit of the FBI's lab in Washington, D.C. for analysis. By comparing the samples to hundreds of other guns, examiners determined that it was consistent with the grip of a .25 caliber Raven semi-automatic. It was the same type of gun Derek Russell had purchased from a pawn shop days before his wife disappeared. Unfortunately, the tantalizing discovery would not help with the prosecution. Agents never found Derek's fingerprints on the gun part. To prosecutors, it looked as if the ex-Marine had covered his tracks well. Without a murder weapon or a body, it would be next to impossible to convict Derek Russell of murder. After an investigation spanning several months, 2 states, and thousands of man-hours, the FBI was no closer to arresting their prime suspect, Derek Russell, for the murder of his wife, Marine Captain Lena Gibbs Russell. Though agents had gathered a significant amount of circumstantial evidence, Assistant U.S. Attorney Gregory Vale did not have enough physical evidence to prosecute Derek for the crime. "We didn't have a body. We didn't have eyewitnesses. We didn't have a weapon. And it just took a tremendous amount of investigative skill and effort to put the pieces together, to go out and search out the leads. Tremendous amount of hours and energy that these FBI agents took to gather the evidence. Authorities did not even have enough evidence to make an arrest. Agents were frustrated, as were the hundreds of Marines whose lives had been touched by Captain Lena Russell. It was like the loss of a child or a dear friend, and there was nothing you could do about it. And then what frustrated me so much was she was so close to being extricated from her bad marriage. And for her to be killed, it still bothers me to this day. I mean, it's just one of those things that you just never really totally get over. It looked as if Derek Russell was going to get away with murder, but Derek's past indiscretions would come back to haunt him. We had been contacted by the Naval Investigative Service at Gulfport, Mississippi, that there was some evidence in a locker there that they had maintained from when Derek was discharged from the Marine Corps. And so they sent it to us, and it turned out to be a floppy disk. It had been confiscated when Derek was relieved of duty in Mississippi a year before Lena Russell disappeared. For security reasons, no service member who has been relieved of duty is allowed to go through their documents after dismissal. One of Derek's former superiors found the disk and read its menu of contents. One of the items he saw was the word murder. He clicked on that word, and up came 26 steps, very detailed and elaborate steps outlining how Derek Peter Russell was planning the murder of Captain Lena Gibbs. Derek's plan clearly documented his intentions. The 26 steps were a revealing piece of evidence, because they showed the man's state of mind, his willingness to contemplate murdering another human being, let alone his wife. Step 1 involved leaving for Paris Island, where Lena Russell was stationed, and making it look as if she had left voluntarily. That was exactly what he tried to do when he murdered his wife. And the last thing the plan said was to blame it on her own kind, obviously referring to her race. This was a man who clearly had the mental wherewithal, intent, and motivation to commit such an act. In early 1991, the computer file convinced federal prosecutors to bring charges against Derek Peter Russell for the murder of his wife, Captain Lena Gibbs Russell. Ironically, Derek was arrested while working at a prison. He had recently taken a job as a substance abuse counselor at Pennsylvania's Graterford State Correctional Institution. But prosecution would not be easy. Assistant U.S. Attorney Gregory Vale would have to assemble all the pieces of circumstantial evidence like a mosaic. Hopefully, the jury would see the portrait of a killer emerge. Assistant U.S. Attorney and co-prosecutor Thomas Reed would help prepare the case against Derek. It was clear they were going to have to make it on circumstantial evidence. A lot of that circumstantial evidence was the result of what Derek Russell had been saying and doing since his wife's disappearance. So the plan was to assemble all that into some sort of coherent scheme and present that. Never before had the federal government attempted to try someone for first-degree murder based solely on circumstantial evidence. At trial, the prosecution asserted that Derek Russell intended to commit murder when he bought the .25 caliber Raven semi-automatic days before the disappearance. Several of his co-workers reported that he had told them a .25 caliber was a perfect weapon. Since I'm going to be out this week, it leaves little evidence behind. There's virtually no blood spatter, and the bullet usually lodges in the body. On the day she gave him the separation papers, he refused to sign. Just after midday that day, the prosecution believed Derek Russell snuck up on Lena in the shed. He had to wait for nightfall before he could remove the body. To establish an alibi, he talked with a neighbor and lied to Lena's friend about his wife walking to the base exchange to buy paint. Around late afternoon, he went to Lori Kane's house and borrowed her station wagon. After night fell, he wrapped Lena's body in a tarp and placed it in the back of the car. Their neighbors saw it backed up to the shed. He then drove several hours to St. Clair, Pennsylvania, with the body in the back of the car. Once there, he knew exactly where to go. There were hundreds of abandoned mines to choose from. Then Derek Russell, who had once sworn to uphold honor as a member of the Marine Corps, dumped his wife's body into a mine shaft. He threw dynamite in to bury the evidence under thousands of pounds of rock. The jurors were convinced. In the spring of 1991, Derek Peter Russell was convicted of murdering his wife, Lena Gibbs Russell. Derek Russell was sentenced to life. There is no parole in the federal system. He will never leave prison alive.